Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome to Adventures in History. Today's topic is the 1964 Cleveland Indians MLB baseball season. Again, the Tribe was playing in the American League, the junior circuit of Major League Baseball, and home games were played at Cleveland Municipal Stadium downtown, where First Energy Stadium now stands. The Tribe had a reasonable year in 1964. They finished in 6th place with a record of 79 and 83, 4 games under 500, winning percentage of .488, 20 games out of first. The first place team was the New York Yankees, who were 99 and 63, winning percentage of .611. Second place, the Chicago White Sox, 98 and 64, 1 game out of first. Third place, the Baltimore Orioles, 97 and 65, 2 games out of first. So there were three teams contending for the title. The American League pennant. Fourth place, the Detroit Tigers, 85 and 77. Fifth place, the Los Angeles Angels, 82 and 80. Sixth place, the Cleveland Indians, 79 and 83. Seventh place, the Minnesota Twins, also 79 and 83. Eighth place, the Boston Red Sox, 72 and 90. Ninth place, the Washington Senators, 62 and 100. And in 10th and last place, the Kansas City Athletics, 57 and 105, winning percentage of .352, 42 games out of first. Tribe attendance in 1964 was 653,293 for an average of 7,967 per game, which was up 90,000 from 1963. However, the Indians lost $1.2 million, and the stockholders were called to contribute cash so they could meet the bottom line. On October 5th, the Tribe directors voted to send Gabe Paul and Bill Daly on a 3-day fact-finding mission and tour to Seattle, Oakland, and Dallas, exploring the possibility of moving the team to another city. And after that trip, the directors voted to keep the Tribe in Cleveland. However, they were having financial woes. As a result, the Tribe farm system had been cut from 9 teams to 4 teams, and scouting was curtailed. Also, promotion and marketing was minimal. Tribe pitchers set an American League record in 1964 with 1,162 strikeouts. Wow. After the season, after the fact-finding mission, the Tribe signed a 10-year lease with the city of Cleveland regarding the Cleveland Municipal Stadium, and the city agreed to make $4 million in improvements to the stadium. 1964 was the first year that the New York Mets played in Shea Stadium in Flushing, New York. And during a winter banquet, Casey Stengel was asked about the new Shea Stadium, and he said, quote, "It has 57 bathrooms, and I need one now." The 1964 World's Fair was right next to Shea Stadium. The New York Mets outdrew the Yankees by 400,000 fans in 1964. Very strange. You know, the Yankees finished in first in the American League, the Mets in last, but the Mets are developing followers. On June 21st, 1964, Phillies pitcher Jim Bunning had a perfect game against the Mets, the first perfect game in the National League in the 20th century. Mets manager Casey Stengel called prospect Ron Swoboda Ron Saboda. Stengel's favorite ride at the World's Fair was It's a Small World. In August, the Tribe swept the Orioles in a series at the stadium. Pretty good. Orioles manager Hank Bauer said, quote, "As Custer said, where'd all them blasted Indians come from?" I read a fine book. The title is October 1964 by David Halberstam, 1994. In August of 64, it was a 3-team race in the American League, Yankees and Orioles, and the other team was the White Sox, right? And David Halberstam wrote, quote, "The Orioles were about to replace the Yankees as the best and most consistent team in the American League." Remember, they were a fairly new team. They'd moved from St. Louis. On March 6th, the new heavyweight boxing champion, Cassius Clay, he'd become a black Muslim, and he changed his name to Muhammad Ali. 1964, the Tribe had only 2,800 season ticket holders, And Cleveland sports writer Hal Lebovitz in August wrote a column in the Cleveland Play Dealer sports section that there was a more than 50-50 chance that the tribe would move. And he wrote, quote, "Cities spend fortunes to try and entice major league clubs. We're on the verge of letting ours get away." Lebovitz urged tribe fans to buy tickets to the home games in September. Again, as I said, the tribe signed a new lease with the stadium, $4 million in improvements, new locker rooms, a fancy restaurant, 1,000 field-level box seats, and new offices for the tribe and the Cleveland Browns, and a cleanup of the brick exterior. Also in the new lease was a lowering of the rent from 7% to 6% of gross ticket sales. Now, Gabe Paul was back as the head of the tribe ownership group and general manager. Now, he was the head of the tribe ownership group from 1963 to 1966, and the tribe GM from 1961 to 1973, and 1978 to 1984. Russell Schneider wrote, quote, "Gabe Paul is just nuts about steam baths. Every town he goes to, he tries to find one. But he didn't want to go alone, so he talked to me into going with him." That was on July 17th, 1964. I'm reading a fine book. The title is The Yankee Princess, Why Dad and I Were in a League of Our Own by Jenny Paul, the daughter of Gabe Paul, with Jody Lynn Smith, 2011. And Jenny Paul wrote, quote, "My dad and I connected through baseball. Baseball is for everyone who believes next season might just be the one. Gabe Paul's career would bring triumph, disappointment, and a lifelong love affair with the game of baseball. Gabe Paul." Jimmy Dudley was back as a tribe radio broadcaster on WERE radio, and Dudley was a tribe broadcaster from 1948 to 1967. Jimmy Dudley. His partner was Bob Neal on WERE radio, and Neal was a tribe radio and TV broadcaster from 1952 to 1953, and from 1957 to 1972. Bob Neal. On television, Harry Jones was a tribe broadcaster on WJW-TV. Jones was a tribe radio broadcaster from 1961 to 1963, and a tribe TV broadcaster from 1964 to 1974 and 1977. And he was a Cleveland Plain Dealer sports writer from 1947 to 1960. Harry Jones. Jones' partner on television was Herb Score on WJW-TV. Herb Score was a tribe player from 1955 to 1959, and a tribe TV and radio broadcaster from 1964 to 1997. And he's buried in Lakewood Park Cemetery in Rocky River, Ohio. So Herb Score was back. It was nice to have him back. And this was the beginning of his long 33 years as a broadcaster. Herb Score. George Strickland was an interim manager and coach in 1964. Strickland was a tribe player from 1952 to 1957, and from 1959 to 1960. He was a tribe coach from 1963 to 1967. On April 4th, 1964, manager Bertie Tebbetts had a heart attack in spring training, and he eventually recovered. And during his recovery, Strickland was the interim manager and had a record of 33 and 39. Tebbetts returned July 3rd, Strickland, at the end of the 66 season, he was also an interim manager again and had a record of 15 and 24. Tommy John wrote, quote, "George Strickland read a great deal and not comic books. He read a lot of Thomas Aquinas, the great Catholic saint and mystic, and many books on philosophy and psychology, Nietzsche, Sartre, and the like." George Strickland. Bertie Tebbetts was back as tribe manager. Tebbetts was a tribe player from 1951 to 1952 and a tribe manager from 1963 to 1966. Again, he had a heart attack in the final days of spring training in Tucson, Arizona, but he recovered and returned to the team. Although he were on July 3rd, but he resumed full managerial duties on August 14th. During the Second World War, Tebbetts was in the U.S. military, and the day after the fighting ended on Iwo Jima in the Pacific, Tebbetts was a player manager of a baseball team, and they organized a game. Now, the fighting on Iwo Jima, 6,000 Americans died. Terrible, tragic. And so anyway, they played this baseball game the day after the fighting ended. And a Marine colonel said to Tebbetts after the game, quote, "This ball game was a lifesaver. These guys would have gone crazy without something like this to take their minds off of what happened here. This was the most important game you'll ever play." Now, actually, after Tebbetts' heart attack, he had heart bypass surgery. Bertie Tebbetts wrote, quote, "It's always important to try your best, not to embarrass an umpire, or as we say in baseball, to show him up. Good publicity is important to a ball player's career. I learned how to appreciate the sports writer's problem, which is to come up with interesting stories every day of the week. That's how the guy makes a living. And if I could help a guy and he could help me, then everybody is happy as hell." Bertie Tebbetts. Now, the coaching staff, Solly Hemus was a new Tribe coach. Hemus was the Tribe coach from 1964 to 1965. Solly Hemus was born in 1923 in Phoenix, Arizona, and died in 2017 in Houston, Texas at age 94. During his playing career, he batted .273 with 51 home runs and 263 RBIs. As a manager, he had a record of 190 and 192, winning percentage of .497. Hemus played for the St. Louis Cardinals and Philadelphia Phillies from 1949 to 1959. And he was the St. Louis Cardinals manager from 1959 to 1961. He was a New York Mets coach from 1962 to 63. And he was a player-manager when he was the manager. He played shortstop and second base. Solly Hemus was known as a hard-nosed player, known for battling opponents and umpires. Was ejected 30 times in his career from 1952 to 65. When he was traded by the Cardinals to the Phillies in 1956, Hemus wrote a letter to Cardinals owner August "Gussie" Bush, expressing pride in being a Cardinal and gratitude to the club. He was reacquired by the Cardinals in '58 and named player-manager, and Bush admired Hemus for his fiery personality, and he remembered that fine letter that Hemus had written 2.5 years before. He was a coach for the '62 Mets, first year for the Mets. After he retired from baseball, Hemus entered the oil business in his adopted hometown of Houston, Texas. In the minors, Hemus played for the Houston Buffaloes and Pocatello Cardinals. Solly Hemus. Elmer Vallo was back as a coach. Vallo was a Tribe player in 1959 and a Tribe coach from 1963 to 1964. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. He also was a Tribe manager in the minors, and he was a Philadelphia Phillies scout until his death in 1998. Elmer Vallo. Early Wynn was a new coach. Wynn was a Tribe player from 1949 to 1957 and in 1963. And he was a Tribe coach from 1964 to 1966. Early Wynn. Now the starting lineup, John Romano was the catcher. Romano batted .241 with 85 hits. He scored 46 runs, 18 doubles, a triple, 19 home runs, 47 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, 51 walks in 106 games. Romano was a Tribe player from 1960 to 1964. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB career continued until 1967. John Romano. Bob Chance was the first baseman. Chance batted .279 with 109 hits. He scored 45 runs, 16 doubles, a triple, 14 home runs, 75 RBIs, 3 stolen bases, 40 walks, 101 strikeouts in 120 games. Chance was with Cleveland from 1963 to 1964. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB career continued until 1969, and then he played pro baseball in Japan in 1970. Bob Chance. Larry Brown was at second base. Brown batted .230 with 77 hits. He scored 33 runs, 12 doubles, a triple, 12 home runs, 40 RBIs, a stolen base, 24 walks in 115 games, and Brown was with Cleveland from 1963 to 1971. Larry Brown. Dick Hauser was at shortstop. Hauser batted .256 with 163 hits. He scored 101 runs, 23 doubles, 4 triples, 3 home runs, 52 RBIs, 20 stolen bases, 76 walks in 162 games, and Hauser was with Cleveland from 1963 to 1966. Hauser's 101 runs scored was only second. He was the only second Indian since 1955 to reach 100 runs scored. Before Tommy John made his first start as a pitcher in 1964, Dick Howser said, quote, "Just let him hit it, TJ. We'll make the plays. You'll be okay." And Tommy John wrote, quote, "You could tell even then, Dick Howser would make a fine manager." Dick Howser. Max Alvis was at third base. Alvis batted .252 with 96. He scored 96 runs. He scored 14 doubles, 3 triples, 18 home runs, 53 RBIs, 5 stolen bases, 29 walks in 107 games. And Alvis was with Cleveland from 1962 to 1969. Alvis was felled by spinal meningitis on June 26th and returned August 5th. And he really never was the same player because that really weakened his system. Max Alvis. Leon Wagner was the new left fielder. Wagner batted .253 with 162 hits. He scored 94 runs, 19 doubles, 2 triples, 31 home runs, 100 RBIs, 14 stolen bases, 56 walks, 121 strikeouts in 162 games. Wagner was born in 1934 in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and died in 2004 in Los Angeles, California at age 69. For his career, he batted .272 with 211 home runs and 669 RBIs. Wagner played for the San Francisco Giants, St. Louis Cardinals, Los Angeles Angels, Cleveland Indians, and Chicago White Sox from 1958 to 1969. He was a two-time All-Star in 1962 and 63. They called him Daddy Wags. Wagner went to Tuskegee University and played on the Golden Gophers baseball team. He had a distinctive left-hand batting style and unique body gesticulations when he batted. In the outfield, his outfield play did not match his stellar hitting. He also had a clothing business, and the slogan was, "Get your glad rags at Daddy Wags" in Los Angeles, California. They also called him Cheeky because he had high cheekbones. Wagner was half American Indian and half African American. He was a solid line drive hitter and a colorful player. He was the All-Star Game MVP in 1962. From 64 to 65, he stole 26 bases in 30 attempts. After he retired, he appeared in some small acting roles in movies, such as A Woman Under the Influence, which came out in 1974, and the bingo-long Traveling All-Stars and Motor Kings, regarding the Depression-era barnstorming teams. Wagner struggled with alcoholism and drug addiction and financial difficulties. He was living in an abandoned electrical shed next to a dumpster in Los Angeles when his lifeless body was found in 2004. Tragic. In the minors, he played for the Hawaii Islanders. Leon Wagner was acquired in the offseason from the Los Angeles Angels for Joe Adcock and Barry Latman. In 2001, he was named by the tribe as one of the top 100 Cleveland Indians of all time. However, Wagner could not be located. Bruce Marcuson wrote, quote, "With his high cheekbones, his rhythmic wiggle of his lower body at the plate, and his thunderous swing, Wagner became a fan favorite. In contrast, his fielding bordered on the clownish." Regarding the trade for Leon Wagner, Carol Conklin wrote, quote, "It turned out to be a steal for Cleveland, and one of the best deals Gabe Paul would make as the Indians' general manager. Leon Wagner was a bona fide slugger. He was a proven everyday player who could push runs across the plate, and that was exactly what the Indians lineup needed. Leon Daddy Wags Wagner." Vic Davalillo was in center field. Davalillo batted .270 with 156 hits. He scored 64 runs, 26 doubles, 2 triples, 6 home runs, 51 RBIs, 21 stolen bases, 34 walks in 150 games. Davalillo was with Cleveland from 1963 to 1968, and he won a Gold Glove as an outfielder in 1964. Vic Davalillo. Tito Francona played right field. Francona batted .248 with 67 hits. He scored 35 runs, 13 doubles, 2 triples, 8 home runs, 24 RBIs, a stolen base, 44 walks in 111 games. Francona was with Cleveland from 1959 to 1964. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB career continued until 1970, and he was the father of the outstanding and current Tribe manager Terry Francona, who's been the Tribe manager since 2013 and was a Tribe player in 1988. Tito Francona. The bench players included Woody Held, who was a utility player, played a variety of positions. Held batted .236 with 86 hits. He scored 50 runs, 13 doubles, 18 home runs, 49 RBIs, a stolen base, 43 walks, 88 strikeouts in 118 games, and Held was with Cleveland from 1958 to 1964. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB career continued until 1969. Woody Held. Fred Whitfield played some first base. Whitfield batted .270 with 79 hits. He scored 29 runs, 13 doubles, a triple, 10 home runs, 29 RBIs, 12 walks in 101 games. And Whitfield was with Cleveland from 1963 to 1967. And he won the 1964 Gordon Cobbledick Golden Tomahawk Award. Fred Whitfield. Chico Salmon was a utility player. Salmon batted .307 with 87 hits. He scored 43 runs, 17 doubles, 2 triples, 4 home runs, 25 RBIs, 10 stolen bases, 13 walks in 86 games. Salmon was born in 1940 in Colón, Panama, Central America, and he died in 2000 in Bocas del Toro, Panama at age 59. For his career, he batted .249 with 31 home runs and 149 RBIs. Salmon played for the Cleveland Indians and Baltimore Orioles from 1964 to 1972. He died of a heart attack at age 59. Tragic. In the minors, Salmon played for the Knoxville Smokies, Denver Bears, Durham Bulls, and the Knoxville Smokies, and the Missoula Timberjacks. There's a story that Salmon went to dinner in a swanky restaurant with executives from the Stroh's Beer Company to discuss the possibility of him being involved in a promotional contract promoting Stroh's Beer. And during the dinner, he ordered a Budweiser beer, which cooled the deal. It was said that Salmon he said that he was not afraid of ghosts, but he believed in them. Carol Conklin wrote, quote, Chico Salmon would turn out to be a valuable and versatile player for the tribe over the next 5 seasons. Chico Salmon. Joe Askew was a spare catcher. Askew batted .273 with 74 hits. He scored 20 runs, 9 doubles, a triple, 4 home runs, 34 RBIs, 16 walks in 83 games. Askew was with Cleveland from 1963 to 1969. Story about Askew, at one point during his career, he caught part of an inning without a catcher's mask. He forgot. After 2 outs, he remembered and went to the dugout and got it. And apparently the batters and the umpires didn't notice as well. And he said, quote, all of a sudden I realized I didn't have it on, so I just called time and went and got it. Joe Askew. Billy Moran played some third base. Moran batted .205 with 31 hits. He scored 14 runs, 6 doubles, a home run, 10 RBIs, 18 walks in 69 games. Moran was with Cleveland from 1958 to 1959, and from 1964 to 1965. Billy Moran. Al Smith played some right field. Smith batted .162 with 22 hits. He scored 15 runs, a double, a triple, 4 home runs, 9 RBIs, 8 walks, 32 strikeouts in 61 games. Smith played in the Negro Leagues for the Cleveland Buckeyes from 1946 to 1948, and he played for the Tribe from 1953 to 1957 and in 1964, and this was the end of his MLB career. Al Smith. Jerry Kindle played some second base. Kindle batted .360 with 9 hits. He scored in 25 at-bats. He scored 5 runs, had a double, 2 home runs, 2 RBIs, 2 walks in 23 games, and Kindle was with Cleveland from 1962 to 1964. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB career continued until 1965. Jerry Kindle. George Banks was a utility player. Banks batted .294 with 5 hits and 17 at-bats. He scored 6 runs, had a double, 2 home runs, 3 RBIs, 6 walks in 9 games. Banks was born in 1938 in Pacolet Mills, South Carolina, and died in 1985 in Spartanburg, South Carolina at age 46. For his career, he batted .219 with 9 home runs and 27 RBIs. Banks played for the Minnesota Twins and Cleveland Indians from 1962 to 1966. He was a prolific home run hitter in the minor leagues, hitting 223 home runs in an 11-year minor league career. In June of '64, he was traded to the Tribe with Lee Stang for Jim Mudcat Grant. He died of Lou Gehrig's disease at age 46. Tragic. The athletic fields in his native Pacolet Mills were named in his honor. In the minors, he played for the Binghamton Triplets and Portland Beavers. George Banks. Al Luplow played some outfield. Luplow batted .111 with 2 hits and 18 at-bats. He scored a run, had a RBI, a walk, and struck out 8 times in 19 games. Luplow was with Cleveland from 1961 to 1965. His great-nephew, Jordan Luplow, is a current Tribe player in 2019, although I think he was just sent down to the minors. Al Luplow. Tony Martinez was a middle infielder. Martinez batted .214 with 3 hits and 14 at-bats. He scored a run, had a double, 2 RBIs in 9 games. And Martinez was with Cleveland from 1963 to 1966. Tony Martinez. Tommy Agee played some outfield. Agee batted .167 with 2 hits and 12 at-bats. He struck out 3 times in 13 games. Agee was with Cleveland from 1962 to 1964. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB career continued until 1973. Tommy John wrote, quote, Tommy Agee had blinding speed and was built like a linebacker. He could outrun just about any ball hit in the general vicinity of center field. Tommy was also a vicious slider. He'd take you out in a second if you hung around the bag too long. Off the field, however, he was a quiet, polite man. Tommy Agee. Paul Dickon was a pinch hitter. Dickon batted 11 times, did not have a hit, struck out 5 times in 11 games. Dickon was born in 1943 in DeLand, Florida, and he's 75 years old in 2019. For his career, he batted 13 times, did not have a hit in 13 games, and struck out 6 times. Dickon was with Cleveland in 1964 and 1966. He played 334 games in the minors and had batted .263 with 61 home runs. In the minors, he played for the Charleston Indians. Paul Dickon. Wally Post played some right field. He batted 8 times, did not have a hit, scored a run, walked 3 times, struck out 4 times in 5 games. Post was born in 1929 in Wendell, Ohio, and died in 1982 in St. Henry, Ohio, at age 52. For his career, he batted .266 with 210 home runs, wow, and 699 RBIs. Post played for the Cincinnati Redlegs, Philadelphia Phillies, Minnesota Twins, and Cleveland Indians from 1949 to 1964. So this was the end of his MLB career. He's in the Cincinnati Reds Hall of Fame. Post was a powerful slugger in the mid-1950s with a strong, accurate throwing arm. In 1955 with the Reds, he batted .309 with 40 home runs and 109 RBIs. In 57 with the Reds fans stuffed the ballot box for the MLB game. Post and 6 other Reds were voted as starters on the National League All-Star team. However, MLB Commissioner Ford Frick intervened and removed Post and Gus Bell, the father of Buddy Bell, and replaced them with Henry Aaron and Willie Mays. Post hit the first home run at Dodger Stadium in 1962. He died of cancer. His grandson, Bobby Hoying, went to Ohio State and was an NFL quarterback. In the minors, Post played for the Buffalo Bisons, Tulsa Oilers, and Charleston Senators. Wally Post. Duke Sims was a spare catcher. Sims batted 6 times, did not have a hit, struck out twice in 2 games. Duke Sims was born in 1941 in Salt Lake City, Vermont. And he's 78 years old in 2019. Salt Lake City, Utah. For his career, he batted .239 with 100 home runs and 310 RBIs. Simmons played for the Cleveland Indians, Los Angeles Dodgers, Detroit Tigers, New York Yankees, and Texas Rangers from 1964 to 1974. From 1964 to 1970, he was a mainstay with the Tribe. And he caught Sam McDowell quite a bit in the minors and MLB. In 1972 with the Tigers, he won an American League East title. In Game 2 of the ALCS, Sims was the catcher when Bert Campaneris threw the bat at pitcher Laren LeGros after being hit by the pitch on his ankle. Sims has the record for home runs from a player from the state of Utah, 100. He was in the last game at Yankee Stadium before the renovation in 1973. And the minors, Sims played for the Nashville Vols, Selma Cloverleafs, and Portland Beavers. He used a first baseman's glove to catch knuckleball pitchers. Russell Schneider wrote, quote, "It is safe to assume that few Major League Baseball players enjoyed life more than Duke Sims." In 1968, Sims hit a hard ball at Yankees second baseman Horace Clarke, and the ball got past him, was ruled an error by the official scorer Russell Schneider, Cleveland sports writer. And Sims playfully blames Schneider that his lifetime batting average was .239 and not .240, If the play had been ruled a hit, he would have batted .240 lifetime, not .239. And Schneider responded, quote, "The play was called correctly." Russell Schneider wrote, quote, "Duke Sims was a good player who always tried hard and never took a short step on the field." Duke Sims. Vern Fuller played some second base and third base. He batted once, did not have a hit in 2 games. Fuller was born in 1944 in Menomonee, Wisconsin, and he's 75 years old in 2019. For his career, he batted .232 with 14 home runs and 65 RBIs. Fuller played for the Cleveland Indians in 1964 and from 1966 to 1970. In the minors, he played for the Portland Beavers, Dubuque Packers, and Charleston Indians. And he went to Cal State and played for the Northridge Matadors baseball team. Vern Fuller. Now, the pitching staff was anchored by Jack Kralik, who was 12-7 with an ERA of 3.21, 30 games, 29 starts, 8 complete games, 3 shutouts, 190 and 2/3 innings pitched, and 119 strikeouts. Kralik batted .156 with 10 hits. He had a double, a walk, and struck out 23 times. Kralik was with Cleveland from 1963 to 1967. He played on the 1964 American League All-Star team. And he was Cleveland's sports writer and American sports book author Terry Pluto's favorite player as a boy, Jack Kralik. Sam McDowell was 11-6 with an ERA of 2.70, 31 games, 24 starts, 6 complete games, 2 shutouts, a save, 173 and a third innings pitched, and 177 strikeouts. McDowell batted .143 with 8 hits. He scored 2 runs, had a double, 2 RBIs, walked 5 times, and struck out 25 times. McDowell was with Cleveland from 1961 to 1971. At the start of the season, he was playing in the minors for the Portland Beavers and went 8-0. In 1961, McDowell threw a pitch so hard he broke 2 ribs. In high school, McDowell threw 3 no-hitters in a row. The Tribe signed McDowell out of high school and he was touted as the next Herb Score. Sam McDowell. Dick Donovan was 7-9 with an ERA of 4.55, 30 games, 23 starts, 5 complete games, a save, 158 and a third innings pitched, and 83 strikeouts. Donovan batted .146 with 7 hits. He scored 7 runs, had a home run, 8 RBIs, 10 walks, and struck out 27 times. Donovan was with Cleveland from 1962 to 1965. Dick Donovan. Pedro Ramos was 7-10 with an ERA of 5.14, 36 games, 19 starts, 3 complete games, a shutout, 133 innings pitched, and 98 strikeouts. Ramos batted .197 with 7 hits. He scored 6 runs, had 2 home runs, 2 RBIs, 2 walks, struck out 22 times in 44 games. He was used as a pinch runner frequently. Ramos was with Cleveland from 1962 to 1964. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB career continued until 1970. On September 5th, 1964, he was traded to the Yankees for $75,000 and 2 players to be named later, which turned out to be Ralph Terry and Bud Daly. At the time of the trade, Ramos was in Bertie Tebbetts' doghouse. In other words, they weren't getting along. Now, with the Yankees, Ramos went 1-0 with 7 saves and an ERA of 1.25 in 13 games. And now, again, he was in this. Ramos had been in the Tribe bullpen, was in conflict with Bertie Tebbetts. He wanted to be a starting pitcher. Ramos, with the Senators earlier in his career, gave up Mickey Mantle's home run, which was the closest hit to being hit out to be any ball being hit out of Yankee Stadium. And Mantle and Ramos were both disappointed. David Halberstam wrote, quote, "Pedro Ramos was a joyous man and realized he had just lost a moment of derivative mortality, that of having his name linked forever as co-authors of the longest home run in baseball history." Pedro Ramos. Louis Tiant was 10-4 with an ERA of 2.83, 19 games, 6 starts, 9 complete games, 3 shutouts, a save, 127 innings pitched, and 105 strikeouts. Tiant batted .111 with 5 hits and 45 at-bats. He scored 3 runs, had a home run, 3 RBIs, and struck out 13 times. Louis Tiant was born in 1940 in Marianao, Cuba, and he's 78 years old in 2019. For his career, he won 229 games, lost 172, an ERA of 3.30, and 2,416 strikeouts. Wow. Louis Tiant played for the Cleveland Indians, Minnesota Twins, Boston Red Sox, New York Yankees, Pittsburgh Pirates, and California Angels. From 1964 to 1982, what a career. He was a three-time American League All-Star in 1968, 1974, and 1976. Two-time American League ERA leader, 1968 and 1972. He's in the Boston Red Sox Hall of Fame. He won an American League title in 1975 with the Red Sox. He was an MLB pitcher for 19 years. He's also in the Venezuelan Baseball Hall of Fame. He's been considered for the Baseball Hall of Fame, although not inducted so far. His father, Louis Tiant Sr., from 1928 to 1948, pitched for the New York Cubans in the Negro Leagues and could have been an MLB star, but there was a color line. Black fellas couldn't pitch in MLB. And then he played in the winters for Cuba, in Cuba for Cienfuegos. Louis Tiant's father, Louis Tiant Sr., was one of the greatest baseball players in the history of Cuba. In the Negro Leagues in 1935, he got the most votes for the East-West All-Star team. In 1936-37, he led the Cuban League with a record 12 shutouts. In 1947, Louis Tiant Sr. pitched in the Negro League World Series for the New York Cubans against the Cleveland Buckeyes. And Tiant Sr. was the starting pitcher in the series-clinching victory for the Cubans at League Park in Cleveland. After he retired, he bought a truck and started a moving business in Cuba. And he was good friends with his teammate Minnie Minoso, of course, who also played for the Indians. Former Tribe star Bobby Avila and family friend of the Tiants was scouted Tiant in Cuba and recommended him to be signed by the Mexico City Tigers in the Mexican League, which they did, and also later for the Havana Sugar Kings. In 1961, Avila recommended the Tribe sign Louis Tiant, and they did. And he came to the United States. Now, there was a conflict between the U.S. and Cuba in the early 60s. Fidel Castro had started a communist government in Cuba, and there was the Bay of Pigs invasion. It was impossible for Louis Tiant to return to Cuba after that. He did not see his parents for 14 years. His first MLB game was July 19, 1964 at Yankee Stadium, and he threw a 4-hit, 11-strikeout shutout, and the Tribe defeated the Yankees. In 1968, he altered his delivery with a hesitation pitch, and they dropped his velocity because of a shoulder blade injury. He would twist and turn his body into unthinkable positions and spend more time looking at the second baseman than the home plate umpire preparing to throw. In 1968, he had 4 consecutive shutouts, only matched by 4 other pitchers in 50 years of the expansion era. Don Drysdale, who had 6, Bob Gibson 5, Orel Hershiser 5, and Gaylord Perry 4. July 3, 1968, Tiant struck out 19 Minnesota Twins in a 10-inning game. Tiant in 1968 had led the American League had an ERA of 1.60, lowest in the American League since Walter Johnson's 1.49 in 1919. For the Boston Red Sox, he became one of the greatest and most beloved pitchers in Red Sox history, and he was an idol in Boston, where they called him El Tiante. The 1975 ALCS, he had a complete game victory. In the World Series, his parents were allowed to come to the U.S. on a special visa granted by Fidel Castro, and they were at Game 1 of the World Series at Fenway Park when Tiant threw a 6-0 5-hit shutout. And Tiant had a single and scored the first run for the Red Sox in the 6-run 7th inning. He also won Game 4 of the World Series, throwing 173 pitches with his second complete game. He had a no decision in Game 6 when Carlton Fisk hit the walk-off home run in the 12th inning. He also made, for the Yankees, he made TV commercials promoting Colonial brand Yankee Franks. At the end of the commercial, Tiant, with his thick Cuban accent, said, "It's great to be a wiener," and in other words, a winner. And it was never completely clear if he meant wiener or winner. Tiant was a coach in the minors for the Pirates from 1992 to 95, with the White Sox in 97. In the 1996 Summer Olympics, he was the pitching coach for the Nicaragua baseball team. He was also the baseball coach for the Savannah College of Arts and Design from 1998 to 2001. In 2002, he was a coach in the minors for the Red Sox, the Lowell Spinners. Game 6 of the World Series with Tiant pitching, starting Game 6 of the 2004 World Series. Louis Tiant and Carlton Fisk threw out the first pitch at Fenway Park. He's in the Hispanic Heritage Baseball Museum Hall of Fame. Since 2002, Tiant has been a resident of Southborough, Massachusetts. He's always been an avid cigar smoker and launched his own line of cigars that he formulated and designed called El Tiante. He's mentioned in the 1977 movie The Bad News Bears in Breaking Training. He had a unique pitch. His unique pitching motion was imitated. He appeared in an episode of the TV show Cheers in 1983. Tiant was the subject of a documentary, The Lost Son of Havana, in 2009 at the Tribeca Film Festival, which was acquired by ESPN Films. In the minors, he played for the Gold Coast Suns, Louisville Colonels, and Portland Beavers. In Mexico, Tiant played for the Diablos Rojos del Mexico and the Tigres del Mexico. In Venezuela for the Industriales de Valencia, Leones de Caracas, and Tiburones de La Guaira. Now, he started the 1964 season playing in the minors for Portland and went 15-1 and was brought up July 17th. Doug Kirkle wrote, quote, Louis Tiant was a practical joker with a loud and infectious laugh, a bulging waistline, and an ever-present cigar, stinking up the shower room and the clubhouse. Eddie Fisher wrote, quote, anytime you had Louis around, it was going to be fun. I'm reading a fine book. The title is El Tiante, The Louis Tiant Story, Louis Tiant and Joe Fitzgerald, 1976. Joe Fitzgerald wrote, quote, Louis Tiant is proof that the old-fashioned values do have their place in 1976, that it's possible for a guy to beat back the odds by simple perseverance. Long after his baseball victories have been reduced to nostalgia and trivia, his personal victories will remain one of the nicest chapters in all sports. 1961, Tiant was playing baseball in Mexico. He had married Maria Navarro, who was a Mexican, planning to come home to Cuba on a honeymoon and for his new bride to meet his parents. He called his father on the telephone in Cuba. Now, again, Fidel Castro had taken over that country and instituted a communist system for Cuba, and freedom was lost. His father said, quote, Louis, stay in Mexico. Don't come home. There's nothing for you here now. Stay where you are and make a good life for your family. Joe Fitzgerald wrote, quote, 15 years would pass before Louis saw his father again. In that time, Senior Tiant would grow old and gray. Louis and Maria would have 3 handsome children, and the 90 miles which separate Cuba from American soil would continue to separate loved ones. Louis Tiant wrote, quote, we think we have so many problems as we go through life, but then some real problems come along, and we start to realize that all of the other ones just weren't that important. I see my fellow Cubans in this country, and I watch them suffering because of the things that are happening back home, and I suffer with them. I know of some whose parents have died, and they couldn't even go home to bury them. When I was younger, I used to look at Minnie Minoso and dream of being just like he was. We were kind of poor when I was a kid, but thank God I never went hungry. My mother and father took good care of me. They loved me a lot. Ed Fitzgerald wrote about after the 1964 season, quote, Louis Tiant, along with Sam McDowell, had given Tribe fans something to think about in the long, cold winter ahead. Reading another fine book, the title is Son of Havana, A Baseball Journey from Cuba to the Big Leagues and Back by Louis Tiant with Saul Wisnia, 2019. Carl Yastrzemski wrote, quote, I have said it before and I'll always say it. If you want one pitcher to start a big game, it would be Louis Tiant. Nobody was a tougher competitor or a better teammate. He meant so much to us and to the fans. We all loved him. In 1960, Tiant was the top winner in Mexico. Tiant left Cuba in May of 61. Louis Tiant wrote, quote, then the next day, right after I got out, they canceled the flights again. I think only a few flights got out. Mine was one of them. Then nobody could get out of Cuba anymore. 1961 in Mexico, Tiant got a letter. Now this is a little different story from his father. It said, quote, don't come home. Fidel Castro is not going to allow any more professional sports here. No baseball or boxing. If you do come home, I don't think you'll be able to get out again. They're not letting many people leave the island. Just make a life in Mexico for you and your family. Tiant was an only child, and he didn't see his parents from 1961 to 75. Tiant wrote, quote, I asked God every day to just let me see my mom and dad again. I had to find a way to put it all aside and channel everything into my pitching. Now he was in the minors he's pitching in the minors for the Indians, quote, the Cleveland Indians were giving me a chance, and I did not want to blow it. 1963, his wife and son were in Mexico, and his parents were in Cuba, and Tiant was in the minors in the U.S. and the South, experiencing racism. And Tiant wrote, quote, looking back, I thank God I never gave up. He gave me the strength to get through the hatred I experienced. Threw a no-hitter in the minors. Gordon Kobeldek wrote, quote, Louis Tiant could be a name worth remembering. Tiant continued, quote, you can't be intense all the time. I knew the importance of keeping things loose, and the guys on the team appreciated that too. The winter of 63-64, he was in Venezuela, had a 9-game winning streak, all complete games, broken by Gaylord Perry, future Cleveland Indian. 1964, Tiant was with the Portland Beavers in AAA. Johnny Lippon was his manager. Tiant said, quote, Johnny Lippon was like a father to me. He had pitched in Cuba too, and in the big leagues. He was good to me and my family. July of 64, Tiant was with the Tribe, and his teammate was Al Smith. It was great to see him. Al had played with my father in the Negro Leagues and was an old family friend. Again, his first game at Yankee Stadium, the opposing pitcher was Whitey Ford. Tiant wrote, quote, we were playing just across the Harlem River from the Polo Grounds, where my dad had pitched so many years for the New York Cubans of the Negro Leagues without getting the chance to play in the white man's league. His father pitched in that Yankee Stadium in 47 in the Negro League World Series. Now, Tiant wrote about his first game in MLB, quote, Here I was at Yankee Stadium, striking out Roger Maris, the home run king, in front of a big crowd. Maybe this game was on the radio back home in Cuba, and like my father, were listening while playing dominoes. He had a complete game, 3-0 shutout, 4-hitter, 11 strikeouts. Leonard Coppett wrote, quote, Louis Tiant, a 23-year-old Cuban refugee, yesterday made the sort of major league debut that little boys dream about even in Havana. Tiant wrote, quote, They let me do what my father never could do. All the things they did against my father in the Negro Leagues, saying he couldn't play in the big leagues. This puts Senor Skinny back on top. That's what they called his father. We had finally made it. Saul Wisnia wrote, quote, Louis Tiant became an indispensable source of love and laughter for his teammates. The immortal Louis Tiant. Tommy John was 2-9 with an ERA of 3.91, 25 games, 14 starts, 2 complete games, a shutout, 94 and a third innings pitched, and 65 strikeouts. Tommy John batted .208 with 5 hits. He scored 3 runs, had an RBI, and struck out 7 times. John was with Cleveland from 1963 to 1964. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB career continued until 1989. I read a fine book. The title is TJ, My 26 Years in Baseball, Tommy John with Dan Valenti, 1991. Tommy John wrote, quote, Remembrance can be as alive, as vivid, and as instructive as the events upon which it reflects. Survival rests on the ability to prove yourself over and over again. I pray daily, taking the things that are going on in my life and bringing them before God. The Bible says that God will never put more of a burden on you than what you're able to bear. Regarding late in 1988, John wrote, quote, It made me feel great that there were people out there who still cared about me and my career. When people are behind you, it makes the mental struggle less exhausting. You get added drive to continue because you don't want to let down your supporters. When I was about 8 years old, I sent off for a book on how to pitch by Bob Feller. It cost me $3, which was a lot for a kid back then. I eagerly read the book from cover to cover and got hooked on pitching. John in 1961 had a tryout for the Tribe at Cleveland Municipal Stadium, and he wrote, quote, God, it was huge, one of the biggest in baseball. Long linear rows of seats cascaded down to field level in an almost hypnotic pattern. The stands looked distant and unreal, like a painted backdrop or part of a movie set. I tried to imagine what the stadium would be like full of people. The fragrant, newly mown grass was a deep green. My 2 rules were, 1, be the first person at the ballpark. 2, be the hardest worker in camp. It was like that in 1989, also my very first spring training with the Cleveland Indians in 1962. 1963, he had pitched his first MLB game for the Tribe against the Senators in Washington, D.C. John wrote, quote, "The first batter I faced was Don Zimmer. My knees were shaking. Zimmer looked like Popeye in the batter's box, a big jaw of tobacco, squinty eyes, crew cut, and large forearms. My legs didn't stop shaking until I got back to the dugout after getting the third out." For me, optimism means performance in the face of trouble. Problems are opportunities, and obstacles are challenges for true Christians. A door closing simply means that another one is opening up elsewhere. His first start in 1964, he won 3-0. Complete game shutout and a 3-hitter. In January of 1965, Tommy John was traded to the White Sox. Regarding White Sox manager Al Lopez, and former Tribe manager Al Lopez, John writes, quote, "Al Lopez had a better handle on all the facets of the game than any manager I ever played for." In 1972, John was traded to the Los Angeles Dodgers. In July of 74, he had a severe arm injury and did not play until the 76 season. And he had this famous surgery. John wrote, quote, "In orthopedic surgery, rehab is the most important factor in determining success. The guy who makes it back is the one who can handle rehab in a positive, enthusiastic way." Dr. Frank Jobe said that his chances of recovery were 1 in 100. And regarding his rehab, Tommy John wrote, quote, "One piece of scripture sustained me and became like a mantra to me, and that was Philippians 4:13. For with God nothing shall be impossible." Miracles happened thousands of years ago, but could a miracle happen today? Why not? What was faith if not for moving mountains? And what was a miracle? To me, it didn't mean the impossible happening, but rather the achieving of all that is possible. John recovered and was effective in 1976 and afterward. John wrote, quote, "Without my wife Sally's support, I'm not sure I could have done it." Tommy Lasorda was the new manager for the Dodgers in 77, and John wrote, quote, "Tommy Lasorda is perhaps the greatest motivational manager ever to pilot in the big leagues. He created a winning atmosphere. Tommy Lasorda instills confidence in you." By 79, he was with the Yankees, and the Yankee general manager was Al Rosen, a former Tribe third baseman. John wrote, quote, "Al Rosen was an honorable man, warm and outgoing, pleasant to talk to. Bob Lemon was an outstanding manager. He was the Yankee manager, who never got the credit he deserved. He was like Al Lopez. He let you alone and treated you like an adult." 1981, Tommy John's son Travis fell out of the second floor of a house and almost died. Tommy John wrote, quote, "Tragedy opens up closed hearts and often becomes the bridge that enables people to offer each other support, kindness, and even love." He got tremendous support from others, and his son made a full recovery after 18 days in a coma. John wrote, quote, "Coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. There's not a day that goes by where my wife Sally and I don't thank God for sparing our son's life." Tommy John retired in 1989. At the end of his biography, he has a quote from Dallas Green, quote, "A great pleasure in life is doing what people say you cannot do." Tommy John. Don McMahon was the closer. McMahon was 6-4 with an ERA of 2.41, 70 games, 16 saves, 101 innings pitched, and 92 strikeouts. McMahon batted .143 with 2 hits and 14 at-bats. He scored a run, had an RBI, and struck out 8 times. Don McMahon was born in 1930 in Brooklyn, New York, and died in 1987 in Los Angeles, California. For his career, he was 90-68 with an ERA of 2.96, 1,003 strikeouts, and 152 saves. McMahon pitched for the Milwaukee Braves, Houston Colt 45s, Cleveland Indians, Boston Red Sox, Chicago White Sox, Detroit Tigers, and San Francisco Giants from 1957 to 1974. He was an All-Star in 1958. He won 2 World Series titles in 1957 with the Milwaukee Braves and in 1968 with the Tigers. He was used almost exclusively in relief during his 18-year career, one of MLB's busiest and most dependable relievers of his era. He was never on the disabled list. He was an MLB rookie at age 27. McMahon had 5.5 years in the minors and 2 years in the military. He was a valuable part of 2 title teams. With the 57 Braves, he had a 1.54 ERA, 9 saves in 32 games. And with the 68 Tigers, he was 3-1 with an ERA of 2.02 in 20 games. He got his 1,000th career strikeout at age 44, which was All-Star shortstop Don Kessinger. He's in the now his effectiveness against Hall of Famers, now against Henry Aaron, Ernie Banks, Johnny Bench, Harmon Killebrew, Bill Mazeroski, Joe Morgan, Stan Musial, Frank Robinson, Willie Stargell. Those guys hit a collective 149 against him. Gosh. McMahon was a Giants pitching coach from 72 to 75 and from 80 to 82. He was a player coach from 72 to 74, a Twins pitching coach from 76 to 77. McMahon was a Tribe pitching coach from 1983 to 85. He was also a scout for the LA Dodgers. In 1987, he was on July 2nd, he was pitching batting practice for the Dodgers and had a heart attack and died within hours. He was buried with a baseball in his hand. Tragic. In minors, McMahon played for the Atlanta Crackers, Denver Bears, and Toledo Sox. And he was the 1964 Tribe Man of the Year. There was a hot July game in 64 at the stadium, and Bertie Tebbetts was fed up with the players complaining about the heat and threatened a $50 fine for the next player who complained. An inning later, Don McMahon came off the field and said, "Geez, it's so hot out there." Then he paused and said, "But I love it, Bertie. I love it. Honest, I do." He did not get fined. Carol Conklin wrote, quote, "Don McMahon was a standout reliever for 7 different clubs over an 18-year career. You could count on his durable arm and pitching savvy for a full season of putting out fires. Don McMahon." Sonny Siebert was 7-9 with an ERA of 3.23, 41 games, 14 starts, 3 complete games, a shutout, 3 saves, 156 innings pitched, and 144 strikeouts. Siebert batted .265 with 13 hits. He scored 5 runs, had 2 doubles, a triple, 2 home runs, 6 RBIs, 1 walk, and struck out 9 times. Sonny Siebert was born in 1937 in St. Mary, Missouri, and he's 82 years old in 2019. For his career, he was 140 and 114 with an ERA of 3.21 and 1,513 strikeouts. Siebert pitched for the Cleveland Indians, Boston Red Sox, Texas Rangers, St. Louis Cardinals, San Diego Padres, and Oakland A's from 1964 to 75. He was a 2-time All-Star in 1966 and 67. He threw a no-hitter on June 10, 66 for the Tribe. He was drafted simultaneously by the Tribe and the St. Louis Hawks in the NBA. He went to the University of Missouri, and he pitched in the 1958 College World Series. Siebert had he was third in the American League in ERA in 1967. Siebert was the last American League pitcher to hit 2 home runs in 1 game. Of course, now there's the designated hitter. He did that with Red Sox in 1971. In 1974, he was the winning pitcher in a 25-inning game for the Cardinals, second longest in NL history. In minors, he played for the Salt Lake City Bees and Jacksonville Suns. Sonny Siebert. Gary Bell was a relief pitcher. Bell was 8-6 with an ERA of 4.33, 56 games, 2 starts, 4 saves, 106 innings pitched, and 89 strikeouts. Bell batted .375 with 6 hits and 16 at-bats. He scored 2 runs, had 5 RBIs, a walk, and struck out 5 times. Bell was with Cleveland from 1958 to 1967. At age 9, Terry Pluto had an encounter. When Terry Pluto was 9 years old, he had an encounter with Gary Bell and asked him who was the toughest hitter he ever faced. And Bell answered, quote, "Young fella, the one with the bat, Gary Bell." Lee Stang was 4-8 with an ERA of 4.12, 23 games, 14 starts, 91 2/3 innings pitched, and 78 strikeouts. Stang batted .080 with 2 hits and 25 at-bats. He had an RBI, 3 walks, and struck out 13 times. Stang was born in 1936 in Chicago, Illinois, and died in 2018 in Melbourne, Florida, at age 81. For his career, he was 62-61 with an ERA of 3.56 and 718 strikeouts. Stang pitched for the Minnesota Twins, Cleveland Indians, Boston Red Sox, and Chicago White Sox from 1961 to 1970. He went to Drake University on a football scholarship and played on the football and baseball teams for the Bulldogs. He was mostly a relief pitcher during his career. In 1967, he won an American League title with the Red Sox. In the 67 World Series, Game 3, he pitched 2 innings of scoreless relief. He was a pitching coach for the Red Sox from 72 to 74 and from 81 to 84, and with the Twins in 75, and the A's coach from 77 to 79. He's also a roving minor league pitching instructor for the Red Sox in 71, 80, and from 85 to 94. He's the stepfather of MLB player Jody Reed. In the minors, Stang played for the Fox City Foxes and Wilson Tobbs. Lee Stang. Ted Abernathy was a relief pitcher. Abernathy was 2-6 with an ERA of 4.33 in 53 games. 11 saves, 72 and 2/3 innings pitched, and 57 strikeouts. Abernathy batted 6 times, did not have a hit, and struck out 3 times. He was with Cleveland from 1963 to 1964. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB career continued until 1972. Ted Abernathy. Jim Mudcat Grant was 3-4 with an ERA of 5.95, 13 games, 9 starts, a complete game, 62 innings pitched, and 43 strikeouts. Grant batted .273, pretty good, 6 hits. He scored 3 runs, had a double, 2 home runs, 5 RBIs, a stolen base, a walk in 20 games. He was also used as a pinch runner. Jim Mudcat Grant was a Tribe player from 1958 to 1964, and a Tribe TV broadcaster from 1973 to 1974 and in 1977. He was traded to the Minnesota Twins on June 15th for Lee Stang and George Banks and cash, $100,000, to help the Tribe meet their payroll. 1965, Grant was the best pitcher in the American League and led the Twins to the World Series. Jim Mudcat Grant. Jerry Walker was 0-1 with an ERA of 4.66, 6 games, 9 2/3 innings pitched, and 5 strikeouts. He batted twice, did not have a hit. Walker was with Cleveland from 1963 to 1964, and this was the end of his MLB career. Jerry Walker. Tom Kelly had no decisions and an ERA of 5.59, 6 games, 9 2/3 innings pitched, and 7 strikeouts. He did not bat. Kelly was born in 1944 in Manchester, Connecticut, and died in 2015 in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina at age 71. For his career, he was 20-22 with an ERA of 3.75 and 234 strikeouts. Kelly pitched for the Cleveland Indians from 1964 to 1967, and the Atlanta Braves from 1971 to 1973. In 1965 with the Portland Beavers, he was 16-3 with a 2.38 ERA, and he threw a no-hitter on May 29th. 1971, with the Atlanta Braves, he was 9-5 with an ERA of 2.96 and 5 complete games. He saw Henry Aaron hit his 600th home run. After he retired, he worked for UPS for 15 years and as a center manager. Kelly pitched for he's in the Manchester Sports Hall of Fame. In the minors, he pitched for the Tidewater Tides. Tom Kelly. And finally, Gordon Seyfried had no decisions and an ERA of 0.00, 2 games, 2 1/3 innings pitched, and he had no earned runs allowed. He did not bat. Seyfried was with Cleveland from 1963 to 1964, and this was the end of his MLB career. Gordon Seyfried. After the regular season, the 1964 World Series was played. The St. Louis Cardinals, National League champions, defeated the New York Yankees, American League champions, 4-3. This was the last World Series the Yankees would play in until 1976. MVP of the World Series was Bob Gibson of the Cardinals. Hall of Famers in the World Series for the Cardinals, Lou Brock and Bob Gibson. For the Yankees, Yogi Berra, the manager, and Whitey Ford and Mickey Mantle. Mickey Mantle hit a record 18th World Series home run, and this was his last World Series. After the series, Yankee manager Yogi Berra was fired after only 1 year as Yankee manager and then became a Mets coach. This was the Yankees' 14th World Series in 16 years. Gosh. Game 3 was tied 1-1 in the bottom of the 9th inning at Yankee Stadium, and Mickey Mantle was said to on-deck batter Elston Howard, quote, "Ellie, you might as well go to the clubhouse and start getting dressed, because I'm ending this game right here." Mantle hit the first pitch for a home run. They called it Mickey's called shot. After the World Series, Cardinals manager Johnny Keane resigned, and the Yankees signed him. He became the new manager of the Yankees. Yogi Berra reportedly called Carl Yastrzemski Carl Yastrzemski. Regarding the Yankees after 1964, Peter Golenbach wrote, quote, "The dynasty was over, the tradition of success and greatness at an end." One of the Cardinals' players was Bob Uecker. David Halberstam wrote, quote, "Years later, Uecker was to make a comfortable living as a baseball comedian, both lecturing and appearing in commercials that mocked his baseball abilities. But in those days, he was performing for his own pleasure and the pleasure of his teammates." For Game 1 of the World Series at Busch Stadium in St. Louis, there was a Dixieland band on the field playing, and Bob Uecker picked up a tuba and started shagging fly balls, which he caught with the tuba, and the crowd cheered. The Cardinals were billed $250 for the dented tuba. David Halberstam wrote, quote, It was the World Series against the mighty Yankees, and the Cardinals were very relaxed. There were 40 million television viewers who watched. Game 1, Yankee starter Whitey Ford was the starter. David Halberstam wrote, quote, "There he was, the pitcher with the most World Series starts, the most World Series innings pitched, the most World Series wins. He walked out to the mound like a man going out to grab a bus to take him to work in the morning." Game 1, the St. Louis won 9-5. David Halberstam wrote, quote, "The Cardinals had drawn first blood, 9-5, and had shown they might be a tougher team in a short series due to their vastly superior speed." Game 7, starting pitcher was Bob Gibson for the Cardinals. Mel Stottlemyre for the Yankees. He'd started he was in the minors up until August, but then it became a rookie sensation and ace of the staff in a few weeks. Went 7-5. That game was a 7-5 victory for the Cardinals. Gibson had a World Series record 31 strikeouts in the series, which he broke later. Game 7, Gibson got a complete game. He was tiring in the ninth, gave up a couple home runs, and manager Johnny Keane was asked why he kept Gibson in the game. And Keane responded, quote, "I had a commitment to his heart." Now, the MVPs in the American League for 1964, Brooks Robinson for the Baltimore Orioles. There's a story of Robinson in the off-season went on a banquet tour, and Robinson was known for his self-deprecating humor. And according to the story, he was visiting a mental hospital and giving a talk. One of the patients said, "Robinson, you stink." And then Robinson hesitated. And then this fellow repeated, "Brooks Robinson, you stink." And Robinson looked at the head doctor, who said, quote, "Go ahead. That's the first sensible thing that patient has said since he's been here." The National League, the MVP was Ken Boyer for the St. Louis Cardinals. And the Cy Young winner, just one given, not one for each league, but one only, was given to Dean Chance for the Los Angeles Angels. So that's the story of the 1964 Cleveland Indians. They had a reasonable year. Anyway, they were our guys. They played for us. God bless the guys who played for the Cleveland Indians in 1964, and everyone else associated with the team, including the fans, especially the Second World War veterans and the Korean War veterans and the Vietnam War veterans, captains of the Cuyahoga, lovers of Lake Erie, Terminal Tower Power, fans of the Free Stamp Statue and the Fountain of Eternal Life, Euclid Avenue Electricity, Severance Hall stalwarts, Cleveland Museum of Art enthusiasts, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and Museum rebels, Christmas Story House happy people, Museum of Contemporary Art maniacs, Cleveland Botanical Garden goers, Old Arcade admirers, Playhouse Square seers, Settlers Landing Park purists, Western Reserve Historical Society wonders, First Energy Stadium friends, Progressive Field pals, Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse renegades, Cuyahoga Valley National Park pioneers, Great Lakes Science Center supporters, and Holden Arboretum enjoyers. Tribe, Browns, Cavs, Monsters, Gladiators, and Fusion Rule. And Spiders, Bulldogs, Rosenblums, Barons, Rams, Crusaders, Force, Crunch, Lumberjacks, and Rockers Rule. Cleveland, City of Champions. Cleveland is the best location in the nation. On the north coast of America, New York is the Big Apple. Cleveland is a plum. It's been 71 years since 1948. This is our year. Go Tribe. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. God bless you. Take care. And I'll see you next time.